On Thursday, 1st of August 2024, I spent most of the night in A&E. Here's what happened. I'd just gotten in from the gym and the sweat was absolutely running out of me, so I went to jump into the shower. And as soon as the hot water hit me, you know that feeling, just the stress of the day just washed away from you, and all of a sudden the day just feels so much more relaxing. But all of a sudden, everything changed. I felt a lump, and not a little itty bitty one. It actually felt like I had 3 down there. The instant dump of adrenaline made me feel super sick, and all of a sudden I was just super panicked. Because what do I do? Do I go to the hospital? Is that overkill? I don't know, but all I knew is I wasn't taking any chances. So quicker than any man has ever finished a shower before, I dried myself off and ran downstairs to tell my wife that we needed to go. We arrived to a pretty quiet Tullamore A&E at just before 8 p.m. It was so quiet that all you could hear was the beeping of instruments, handover taking place behind a locked door, and the worry and tension in the waiting room as everybody there waited to see what their diagnosis was going to be. But within only a couple of minutes, I'm already getting triaged. Catherine, the nurse who was doing my triage, was super sweet, and while she could only calm my worries so much as she took my blood pressure and the rest of my details, she made me feel like it was the right decision. She took the time to sit and listen to what I was talking about, and she made me feel heard, and I really, really appreciated it. Once we're done, it's back out to the waiting room, and while internally I'm like, let me see a doctor now, I need to see somebody quick, I realise that I'm not an urgent case. We've got people sitting beside me with broken bones and blood running out of them, and so I know I'm going to be waiting a while, so I get myself comfortable and just sit and wait. I'd usually consider myself to be a pretty calm and calculated person, and if something is outside of my control, I'm generally able to compartmentalise it and ignore it, but this was different. I was stressed, I was panicking, and I was catastrophizing, and I was telling myself stories that were probably not going to be true, and I knew they weren't going to be true, but I couldn't help it. I was just completely and utterly panicking, and I felt like I was sitting in my own sweat and discomfort, just waiting, watching the door, hoping that the next person came out would call my name. Shortly after midnight, I was called in and had some bloods taken. I was told it would be about 2 hours to process them and that the doctor would call me in as soon as the results were available. At some stage at around 2:15 a.m, my name gets called, and so up I go and go into the consultation room. The doctor who brings me in is a man in his mid-30s, I'd say, and he too was incredibly sweet. Despite the fact that there was plenty of people sitting in the waiting room, he didn't rush. He sat down, listened to what I had to say, and made sure that he put as many of my worries to bed as he could. But one physical examination later, and he confirmed my fears. There was something there. I wasn't making it up, and it wasn't just panic. I had felt something. He actually thought it was a vascular issue more than anything else, but because he couldn't actually look in, all he could do was speculate, and so what I needed was an ultrasound. Now, unfortunately, because of the time of the night it was, there was nobody around who could actually do a testicular ultrasound, so I was going to have to wait. So what he said was that I could go home and at roughly 8 a.m. or 9 a.m, somebody would give me a call to see if they were able to fit me into the next day's schedule. Just before 3 a.m, my head was hitting the pillow and I pretty much went straight to sleep. I don't know if it was all the adrenaline that had been coursing through my veins for the last number of hours, but I just completely and utterly crashed. And I was grateful for that fact because the last thing I wanted was to be up all night worrying about what news I was going to get the next day. 9:45 the next morning, I get the phone call and they've managed to squeeze me in. They've asked me to come down pretty much straight away, so off I go into my car and head back to the hospital. I was probably only lying on the bed for a couple of minutes, but it felt like an absolute eternity. I can still picture the ceiling tile with the mark on it that I couldn't take my eyes off and the smell of the scented ultrasound fluid that the doctor was using, but it felt like forever. Less than an hour after I arrived, I was leaving with a diagnosis of a benign cyst. Essentially, nothing to worry about and just something to keep an eye on. The relief was overwhelming. But you might be sitting there asking yourself why I'm telling this story. It was when I was sitting in the waiting room the night before that I had the realization. Yes, I was worried about what the diagnosis might be and how my wife was going to raise my unborn child on her own, but what I wasn't worried about was the fact that I had wasted so much of my life. We've all heard those horror stories where somebody gets some bad news or has a medical emergency and they're left with this panic and worry, wondering why they've wasted so much of their life working in a job that they hate for somebody who they can't stand and have been kicking their dreams and goals down the road, saying that they will get to them someday. They vow to learn from this scare and to stop living a life that they don't enjoy and instead to build one that they really, truly love. And not once over the 12 or 14-ish hours did that thought come into my head. In that moment where most people realise that they've been wasting their life focused on things that don't matter, all I was doing was remembering and being grateful for the memories that I have with those people who I care about. I hope you never do, but please don't wait until you get a scare. Use mine as a catalyst to sit down and assess where you're bringing your life. Are you happy with the direction you're going, and is it one that you truly want? Tomorrow isn't promised, and the best time to fix a leaking roof is when the sun is shining. That's this week's video, folks. Have a great week. Peace.